Hi guys, welcome to or back to the channel. I hope you guys are excited for today's video. I'm filming on my phone today. I was having some technical difficulties with my camera, so I'm filming on my phone. Also, I think this is gonna have to be a two-part video because you guys asked a lot of questions about Ezra. I know some of them are repeats, so that should help, but I also know you guys don't like watching super long videos. I understand that I might have to make it into two parts. I'm also looking down at my laptop to read questions, so that's what my brain is doing over here, if you guys see that. I'm just gonna give like a little bit of an intro to Ezra just because I feel like people when they're new to the channel are so confused about Ezra, like he throws them for a loop. So I'm going to just kind of very vaguely explain Ezra's story. So he was a 27-weeker triplet. He's my smallest baby. He was born 1 pound 12 ounces. He is identical to Daxon, but they have not had the same health issues, somehow identical. We'll see, we're gonna do genetic testing. He spent the first X amount of months of his life on a ventilator, intubated with a tube down his throat. They were able to extubate him 2 times successfully. One time he only lasted a week off the vent, and the second time he was actually doing pretty good, and we were hoping that we were headed the right direction. Then he got sick with rhinoenero, and he kind of like backtracked and got really sick, and then he developed severe pulmonary hypertension. He had a pulmonary hypertension crisis, and he ended up having to go back on the ventilator. He was paralyzed and sedated, and at that point we made the decision to move forward with a tracheostomy or a trach. In today's video, I'm just going to answer questions, but in part 2 video, I'm going to actually show you and kind of explain the trach and like what management and care looks like at home. But this one, I also kind of wanted to answer some of you guys' questions just so when people come on the channel or just, you know, our viewers in general, there's just a video about Ezra and like everything that's going on with him. The reason that we decided to do a trach is because whenever he's intubated with a tube down his throat, a breathing tube, he can't get out of bed, he can't play, like interact, he can't, you know, he can't really do anything. He can't eat. And so with the trach, he's able to do everything that brothers can do, except he can't go in a pool or go underwater. That's pretty much it. He can practice rolling over. He can have PT, OT, and most importantly, he can come home and be with us. This process has taken a little bit longer than we anticipated. The average is like 4 to 5 months after getting a trach is usually when babes come home, and he's been in there 7 months since getting his trach placed in January, considering it's now August. We still don't know how long it's going to be. We have had a couple different discharge dates and they've had to get pushed back. So he was supposed to come home in July, and now we have no discharge date and it's indefinite at this point. So it's frustrating, but we're getting there, I guess, surely but slowly. So somebody said, I would love to hear about all the milestones and progress that he has made so far. So one big thing that he started doing this week was rolling over. I guess it was technically like a couple weeks ago, but he's like finally rolling over consistently on his own. And he also loves to go up like on his strong arms and like look at himself in the mirror, and he's like just so proud of himself. It's literally the cutest thing ever. He's just like, I am such a big boy. He also is sitting for short periods of time, like up to a minute by himself, which is really good because for him that's like really hard. Like that's what he struggles with the most. He was in bed his whole entire life. So he's also been able to try some foods lately. So like mashed bananas, applesauce, pudding, carrots, stuff like that. So he just gets small amounts by mouth, but that's still progress in my book. I mean, the oral aversions these kids have had and the therapies they've had to work through just from all the trauma in their nose and mouth region is so sad. Like it's awful, but they're all doing so good with that, including Ezra. I know the hope is that he makes it home soon, but if delays do keep happening, at one point when they consider transferring him from the NICU to the PICU. So it's usually 18 months. And he's 15 months right now. So if he's there in a couple months, which he better not be in 3 months still there, but who knows at this point, he could potentially be transferred to the PICU. But my primary nurses were like, there's absolutely no way we would let that happen or let him move down there. So hopefully that wouldn't happen and he won't have to be there long enough that that's even a question. What is expected for Ezra in short and long term? So short term, obviously, the goals for him right now are to stop getting plugs in his trach that are causing these bagging events and basically weaning some settings down on his ventilator. So he has one specific setting that's like his pressures are way too high and he's hitting like very high pips on his ventilator, and those have to come down stably for 2 weeks in order for him to come home, and he is just not quite there yet. So I'm hoping like as settings start getting weaned and just getting bigger and stronger that he will be able to, you know, wean those down. Long term, honestly, just the same as brothers. The biggest question that we always get asked is, will he have his trach for life? And the answer is no, unless for some reason he just never got better, but that's not currently what his situation looks like. So they expect that he will have it out anywhere from a year to 3 years. Most trach babies that are put on a trach for either chronic lung disease or bronchopulmonary dysplasia or like hypertension issues, which is what Ezra has, are off by the age of 3. It's like 85% of trach babies have their trach removed by the age of 3. So what will happen long term is he will eventually not need his ventilator anymore, but then we will put a cap over his trach and he will have to learn to breathe in through his nose and mouth, versus right now he's breathing solely through his trach, if that makes sense. How do you emotionally and physically function having 2 babies at home and Ezra still in the hospital? Well, I'd like to say that we do a good job, but it is hard. There's days where I like can't go to the hospital. Like I'm mentally just exhausted with it. And physically it does take a toll on me too. I mean, I've been sleeping more than I've ever slept in my whole life and just like been really down and depressed lately with everything going on with Ezra. And like I said, like I want to see Ezra, but I'm so sick of going and seeing him in the hospital. So of course I still do it, but there's some days where I like cannot bring myself to go. Like I have to take care of myself in order to be good for Ezra. So it's kind of like finding that happy medium where I'm not pushing myself too much, but I'm also like taking care of his needs too. The good thing is that I know whenever I'm not there, his primary nurses that are there treat him literally like their child, and I find comfort in knowing, just seeing how happy he is with them and how much he loves them, that he's like taken care of when I'm not there. A couple of you just said like, thank you for making educational videos, answering questions, providing support for other trach families. And honestly, like I get a lot of scrutiny sometimes for posting like my kids, you know, struggles on the internet because they're not consenting. But at the end of the day, I think that they will be so thankful that I took the initiative to support other families that are going through similar situations and to provide hope. And I also think that they would appreciate that I was able to stay home with them and not have to send them to daycare or, you know, miss out on them growing up and being a part of their lives. So somebody asked if Ezra grows, would he need like an oxygen cannula like Daxon, or would he like, what would that look like? Probably not. By the time that he won't need a trach anymore, he shouldn't need oxygen. I think that he's on like 28% oxygen. Room air's 21%. So I think by the time that he outgrows his trach, he won't need oxygen support anymore. Do they know what prognosis for his future? Will he walk, talk, have mental delays? I don't think mental delays necessarily, but he'll just have delays in general. I mean, he's been in the hospital over a year, and that's really just not a place for him to grow and thrive and develop. And I do have faith that as soon as it's safe for him to come home, they want to get him home, but it's just very frustrating in the fact where I feel like we're at such a standstill and we're just kind of like fighting that right now. Yes, he will eventually walk, talk, do all those things, but of course it's not going to be on the same timeline necessarily as every other baby. Again, he will not always have his trach, and he will be able to do, as of right now, everything that a normal baby would be able to do, just in due time, probably a couple years from now. This was a great question. You two seem so capable of caring for Ezzy at home, so if the hospital said nope a few more months, are you legally allowed to just take him home anyways? AMA against medical advice. I don't think so. I really don't know. I think that I've seen situations like that happen where you try to go around it, but it's like, I don't think that would probably happen. I know that we're capable of taking care of Ezra, but we also don't want him to come home and have emergent situations all the time. So yes, I feel confident in me and Braxton's abilities to handle an emergent situation, but that doesn't mean we want him to come home and have emergent situations every day and just take our odds or risks that, you know, when he's in the hospital, he has everything he needs for an emergency situation. Everybody's ready, on hand, on deck for those situations. You know, they have medical emergency teams, or, you know, they just are more prepared. Here, I feel, yes, we can take care of the situations, but we don't want to have to be doing it constantly and consistently. And just kind of seeing how in PCU, how exhausting it was when Ezra's vent settings were wrong, we don't want to live that life with him home. So of course I would want him home more than anything, but I also have 2 other babies that I have to keep in mind and take care of, and I can't be doing CPR on Ezra every day or bagging him constantly, and that's not safe for him either. It's just not like an ideal situation. I just had to read this comment because it was so sweet. You guys are such amazing parents, and you are an exceptional mother. The love you have for your babies really shows. I love your attitude that you did not put up with other people's over your kids, and you do not stand for the nonsense. My nephew has special needs with a G-tube and trach, so I love that you are educating people about kids with medical needs. I wish there were videos like yours years ago teaching how to care for children with medical needs. I truly believe your videos are helping people understand special needs children are just like other kids. They just need a little extra attention, for lack of better words. I hope you continue educating others and sharing your children with us. Love your videos and your family. So sweet. Somebody asked, is their prematurity the reason for their medical problems, and will they grow out of it? Yes, their prematurity, for the most part, is the cause of all all of their issues. The only exception to that is Daxon's esophagus. So Daxon probably would not have really any issues. He was actually like the strongest respiratory wise whenever he was born. He was the only baby that didn't need intubated right away. He was actually like just on a cannula at first with like a non-invasive pressure ventilation. So I truly think if he didn't have his esophagus, he would probably be ahead of where Croy was. He definitely would have came home before Croy, but we had to keep him in the hospital forever to deal with his esophagus defect. That was just crazy odds. We knew before they were even born premature that he would have that issue. So that's what's unfortunate, is we just had really a lot of things go against our favor. I mean, first of all, most triplets do make it further than when I made it, but it just didn't happen for us that way. Most babies still born that early, you know, come out of it without needing a feeding tube. All 3 of mine needed a feeding tube. Only 13% of premature infants or infants born early need a trach, and we were in that 13%. Daxon's odds of having his esophagus defect were like crazy. We had it happen. So I don't know why, but that's just what our journey was. Will he ever move out? Will he live on his own and know how to do his medical care? So yeah, he won't have these issues forever. I would say probably worst case scenario, he may have a feeding tube the rest of his life. I personally know that these kids are strong and they're warriors, and I don't think that that will even happen. It's possible if he never gets over his oral aversion, but as of right now, there's nothing long-term that Ezra will not be able to live a normal life like everyone else. So there's not anything that he's already like catching up to Daxon as far as physical needs. So he's doing rolling over and practicing sitting. He's very interactive. He knows what's going on. He's coherent. He's moving his arms and legs like normal. So of course something later could happen, but that's with any baby, not just like because of Ezra's trach. It's just any baby could, you know, develop issues later on, or especially any preterm infant. But right now we're hopeful that he'll be just like any other normal adult or teen or whatever. This was a great question, and I don't know that I can answer it, but it said, Cinti and Daxon are identical, and they said Daxie might have Vactral syndrome. Is that something that may affect Ezzy, or is it related to how he developed in the womb and not genetic? I don't know. That's still been like kind of a question that we've been struggling with, because again, if they're identical, you would think Ezra would have had the esophagus defect that Daxon had. They're identical, you know, their DNA. I don't know if it was after they split apart that formed. I'm not really sure, and neither really has the team been sure about that. So we're still waiting to do genetic testing until they're like a little bit bigger and Ezra comes home from the hospital. I'm currently working with a 27-year-old man that has a trach and isn't functional. Does Ezra have an inner cannula? I don't even know what an inner cannula is. I don't know if it's like the catheter that you're talking about. He literally just has like his trach in, if that makes sense. There's nothing else in there. I know originally he had like a catheter that went down his nose and was like in his diaphragm area, but right now he has a stoma, and then like his trach is like this and fits into his neck, and then the end is just connected to the ventilator. Obviously you would know that, but yeah, he's already made a lot of progress weaning on the ventilator, so I'm not even concerned that he would never come off the vent. I mean, he's a fighter. I think he'll be just fine. I would love to hear how their personalities differ if they do. Oh my gosh, yeah, they differ. Croy's an absolute psychopath. I love him to death. He's nuts. He will not stop. He can't sit still. Like, he always has to be doing something, always has to be moving. He has a really hard time like staying still, whereas I know like that's a normal probably like toddler behavior. But Daxon, although now he's figured out that he can play and like move around, he's just content with life. Like, he just doesn't care. He can be doing like pretty much anything. You want him to sit up, he'll sit there. You want him to lay down, he'll lay there and roll around. But he's not like so sporadic, whereas Croy's just like, he's really freaking smart. He wants to like stand up. He's like no fear. He dives headfirst into like the ball pit. He like stands in the middle of the room by himself and then just falls over. Whereas Daxon's very like hesitant with stuff. He's just kind of like, I don't know, like more reserved and laid back. Ezra is like, I feel like a happy medium. He has a little spicy attitude to him, but he's also like really sweet too. Not to say Croy isn't sweet. Like, all my babies are just so perfect and sweet. I'm just kidding. But Daxon is like the biggest snuggle bug. You could snuggle and cuddle him for hours and he would be so content. Ezra, I feel like, is like, okay, I'll snuggle you for a while, but then I'm sick of it. Croy's like, I don't want to snuggle, I want to run and play. So funny to see how like different they are. Ezra, I feel like, is pretty content too though, like with different toys. He's just like learning so much right now, and he was like sedated and asleep so long that I feel like everything's just so interesting to him. What is the first thing you plan to do when Ezra gets home and you are all together? Oh my gosh, I don't even even know. I'm gonna have photo shoots every day in their outfits. If, you know, he stays stable, I really want to take him like to the pumpkin patch this fall. You know, if we can feel confident in taking him places yet. I don't know how we'll feel yet, but I want him to live a normal life like brothers until he's able to come off the vent. I don't want his equipment right now to stop him from having the same experiences as Daxon and Croy. Hopefully within the next like year and a half, he'll come off the vent and he'll just have his trach in, and that will make things a lot easier because it won't be so scary and we won't have to pack up as much equipment. So a lot of people ask like when he gets his trach removed, like what will happen. They literally just take it out and it closes on its own. Sometimes they have to go in and surgically close it, but like I don't know the percentage, but most of the time it just closes on its own, which is like really interesting to me. I actually saw a post of like pictures per like day of it closing up on its own, and it's pretty cool how like your tissue does that. That's why we have his normal trach size, and then we have a backup trach on hand at all times. We have one in our like setup in his room, like next to his crib, where it's his normal trach, and then his downsized trach, and then we have like an emergency go bag, and same thing, his normal size trach and then his downsized trach, because in case of an emergency, say that you know, the trach falls out and you don't realize it because baby's breathing on their own okay for a little bit, sometimes that hole will like close up faster than you think and you can't get the regular size trach in, so you have to do the smaller trach. I would love to hear about how he communicates with you and what you are doing to support his communication development. So I plan once he comes home to start sign language. I've been trying to do that with both of the boys just because Daxon's vocal cord, we don't know. He'll probably have a voice, but it's going to be raspy and he's probably going to have speech therapy and stuff like that. So I just think it's really beneficial to do sign language anyways. I've always wanted to do sign language. I love the language. I think that it's like so interesting, and babies can sign, you know, and do motions faster than they can speak. So I've already started doing, you know, more thank you, water, stuff like that with the boys. Not that like they really are picking up on it yet, but that's what I plan to do with Ezra whenever he comes home. He does see speech therapy in the hospital right now. I'm not sure exactly what they do. I've never been there for those visits, but that's kind of like my goals for him once he comes home. So again, I kind of answered this already, but projected time, hopefully he can have his trach completely out by the time he's 3. The goal is that, you know, 18 months in or so, he can come off the ventilator at least. He's at 7 months right now, so it might be a little longer of a process for him, but I've seen so many babies that have been on higher settings than Ezra be able to come off of it. So I think it's just going to take time with him. What are some things that Ezzy loves? Any favorite toys or activities? He loves to drive his car. I put a video of that up one time, so I'll kind of tag it for you guys so you can go watch it if you haven't. He likes to sit in his high chair like a big boy. He has toys that they've like strapped to the high chair like with like strings so that he can't throw them off, because he likes to do that. He does like to snuggle too, and he really just loves being on his playmat, and now he's like loving to practice like rolling over and getting up on strong arms in the mirror. Like I said, he just thinks he's so funny and like so big, which he is. I'm so proud of him for doing that. He has a bell that he likes to ring, and then he has like this sippy cup, and they put like different like things inside of it, like beads and then like little medical things, and he shakes it. They did like their own little makeshift toy basically. He loves the sound of it shaking. It's so cute. This is a great question. I think I've gone into this maybe in previous videos, but I'm glad that somebody asked this. Are there specific nurses you form bonds with or who really love taking care of Ezra, and how does it work with staffing? If a nurse gets to know a baby, can they be specifically assigned to their care regularly? So yes, they're called primary nurses. So Ezra, last year, whenever he got admitted to Children's Mercy, he was at a different hospital previously, but once we realized how bad his chronic lung disease was, we knew that he needed to be transferred to a different hospital that specializes in chronic lung. So basically when he got transferred there, within like a month, we found a nurse that we like fell in love with, and we asked her to be Ezra's primary nurse, and she said yes, and she's been with him since then. So she's had him over a year now, and she is amazing. We love her so much. She's literally like family to us now. And then like a month after that, we signed on a second primary nurse for days. So this was our 2 daytime primaries, and we absolutely love her too. They're both amazing, and we literally could not be more blessed to have the 2 of them on days. Then we had 2 night primaries who we signed on, one of which is now on days, so we were blessed to have her too. And then Croy and Daxon had a primary who, again, we loved, literally like our family, and we had her since last summer, and so she's been with us a year. So we've had 3 primary nurses pretty much that, well, I guess 4 that have been with us like a whole year. But Corey and Daxon's old primary nurse takes care of Ezra if none of the other primaries are there. So she's technically not his primary, but she's on what they call the likes list. So if the primaries aren't there, then she's able to pick him up. So basically the way that it works for staffing is our head primary, our first primary that we signed on, always has first dibs on him, and then it goes down the line. So it kind of just depends who's there and what staffing looks like, but for the most part, he almost always has a primary there, which is really nice because it helps to like have somebody who knows him. I noticed that his lips are dry. I was wondering if that is an effect from not breathing from the mouth, and also is he allowed to use Vaseline to help moisturize his lips? So it's more or less just because he doesn't take like water or anything by mouth, so it's like his lips get dry. They can't for some reason use Vaseline with oxygen. I'm not like experienced in that, so I understand like the concept of like oxygen being flammable. I don't know. Anyways, so they use lanolin, actually, like the nipple cream that people use when they're pumping. So they do it. It's most of the time his primaries that keep up on it. If he doesn't have a primary there, people like just don't know to do it and don't like, I guess, pay attention as much. So it kind of just depends on who's there with him.